where are all the seasoned nurses?
Yay!
Yay. Okay,
Thank you for my hey.
so I've been a nurse for about 8 years. Nursing is a second career for me. And Kelly, how long have you been a nurse?
Gosh, this will make year 18 for me. I can't believe it. I think I did it too young. I graduated full of a lot of hopes and dreams at the ripe age of 22 years old. So this is, I've been doing it way too long. But I like it. I love it.
So what made you decide to go into nursing?
Wow. So, it's funny. A lot of people, they feel like, if you're smart, you're good at science. Especially back in the day, right? In the 90s, you really didn't have a lot of options, or at least we were made to believe you didn't have a lot of options other than being a doctor. And look, I'm from New Orleans, so that's a big deal. You either a doctor, a pharmacist, or you're a nurse, will let you slide as an RN. But I noticed, I grew up and I guess what people will now call the hood, but it's in New Orleans is New Orleans. It's a great place. But where I grew up, we had a lot of community clinics. And so mostly nurses were there, like the doctor would pass through, but mostly we had nurses that would provide care. And I noticed that nurses were a bit more tangible than doctors, and also even in the schools in the 90s, you always had a school nurse available, again, doing all of the assessments and just chatting with the students. And I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that real live, up close and personal, tangible person to just community people, delivering, of course, safe care, but not in a pretentious way. Not to say doctors are pretentious. Now I know everything is all good, all cool, everybody's social, but it is what it is. A lot of people still feel more comfortable asking nurses questions after the doctor walks out the door. And that's still even today.
Yes, I will totally agree with that. And for me, I kind of got into nursing as a second career, primarily because I was a caregiver for my father. And I had a couple of nurse friends that kind of shared, I guess, a little bit about the industry to me. And I explored while caring for my dad, and then, went ahead and jumped into it. And one of the biggest things that I was interested in being a nurse, beyond just caring for people and kind of giving them that one-on-one attention, was the travel piece. So the idea that you can travel and work and there wasn't any repercussions behind it really intrigued me. And that was kind of what spearheaded me jumping into the industry. So.
Well, that's cool. Especially having a second career, right? At least you can think about what you really kind of want to do. Mm-hmm. So you enjoy traveling and you just kind of plugged it in. That's cool.
So our topic today is, where are all the seasoned nurses? So I don't consider myself a seasoned nurse, even though I feel like I am definitely an experienced nurse. And I will say, in kind of going into my 8th year in the industry, I have noticed that it feels like there are a lot of nurses who have been in the industry for a long time, but maybe have removed themselves from the clinical floor, but that there's still a need for them. That a lot of newer nurses coming out of the industry,
right,
get in and get out quickly. So what are your thoughts as far as where are all the seasoned nurses like yourself, and why there isn't kind of a succession planning to be able to continue to keep them on the floor and supporting new nurses?
Well, I'll tell you this. Look, along with my other colorful nursing career, I have run across a few articles, believe it or not, during a stint of time that I thought about doing grad school, so I started. But anyway, there are a few articles kind of hanging out there that talks about the medical world versus the nurses world, meaning the medical is kind of a bit more patriarchal, male-dominated, though I know it's changing day by day, and the opposite for nursing, though I know that's changing day by day, but it being more matriarchal, more female based, right? Just
Mhm.
career wise, there seems to be a bit of a shadowing of it not being important. It meaning your nurse. The nurse is just not really, I think in the US, the nurse isn't really valued. So as that nurse ages and gets experience on the floor, or whether she's in the radiology department, because nurses are, look, we're there, we're in the ER, we're everywhere. Hell, we're in helicopters, the flight
Yes.
nurses. Once we get to like about year 5, I realized, at least in my experience and what I would watch and notice is you can either be a manager. They'll happily tell you, oh, you can be a manager. More recently, I guess you can be a don. Um,
Mhm.
some of the more established facilities they have, you can be a CNO, a chief nursing officer now, but it's not really a thing. They don't really have a place for you to mentor. That's not really, they don't really give you the option of precept along with pay. Not that it's all about pay, but you should be compensated, I think, for your knowledge. You're not really given the opportunity to research. You're not really given an opportunity to sit at a table to do grand rounds, because I know that's still happening. So
Mhm.
I think that's what it is. I think overall we're especially like with the PAs now, no shade against the PAs, but as they slid them in under the patriarchal coat of medicine, what happened to your nurse? So I don't really think a lot of nurses have options. And so you still work the shifts, right? And so then what comes with that is burnout. Some nurses may not feel fulfilled because we are people, and you change your mind. And so some then leave, whether they go to administrative positions, um, some may get into a second career, some may even go kind of in the clinic, but then still then overshadowed by the doctor and the PA, but you're not on the floor. You're not really there to help that next generation of nurses make it through. So that's what I think.
Great. And I also noticed, even online, a lot of nurses on social media kind of already start early on in their careers thinking about, what's next. Kind of
Right.
having that mind frame of saying, okay, I'm a nurse, but I also need to be a brand ambassador. I need to create something, or I need to also be generating a second income. Do you think that that was something that was kind of left out for more of the seasoned nurses, where they feel they don't have as many options beyond
Well,
retirement?
but you know what? The world was different. Shamika,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that literally the world was different. Everything was a bit more stoic, so to speak. You really weren't allowed creativity. So I remember, and I'm like, wow, I was just too young. If you even wore, for instance, colorful socks, that was an issue. You're not
Mm-hmm.
allowed to express yourself to that degree, right? You need to be in your uniform ASAP. No tattoos are to show. Your hair has to be a certain way. And I mean for all ethnicities. It was just so uniform. I don't really think there was any wiggle room. And so everything was a secret, right? So if you baked cakes on the side, nobody really knew. There was no way you could tie that into nursing. It really wasn't a thing. Um, but that's just how the world was. So I think the way that the world has, kind of developed, which is good, that's helping the new nurses, right? Like, oh, sure, I can be a brand ambassador. I can, wear my t-shirt under my scarves. I think that's great. But also I do think in some ways it overshadows the nobility of the profession in a way, because then I've seen some they're taking pictures in patients' rooms. Why are you doing that? So now being the brand ambassador is really like totally I don't know how that takes more priority than patient care. So I find myself torn in between. So I think that's great that they're now developing into other things and are thinking ahead. But are you really thinking ahead? Or is this just kind of another thing because everything's so trendy now?
Right. And also, we had talked earlier about how it kind of impacts patient care. Many people, unfortunately, go into the nurse profession because they love it and they have a passion for it. But there's definitely a population of people that go into the profession behind the concept that there's so much money to be made
Right.
in the industry. And can you share a little bit about that scenario where you kind of had, um, there was just kind of the breakdown and the inexperience
Yeah.
showing?
Um, so definitely this particularly hit home because it was with my mom. I'll say that. Long story short, she is on dialysis, and that in and of itself, of course, is a tedious process. I understand, with getting the access together, cannulating, all this other stuff. I get it. But specifically what happened with her was she had finally gotten to a place with her access that, per her vascular surgeon, I'll look, huge note there, says, okay, it's all ready to go. It's cool to work. Ultrasound's good. Let's give it a run. She makes it to the clinic. The tech finds it appropriate to basically say, this isn't in a good spot for you. You just need a grant. Mm-hmm. So I contacted the care coordinator. She and I had a great chat. Come to find out, she too is a seasoned nurse. And later in other chats about my mom's care, I found out it seems that she's not used as often as she could or should be used. You know what I mean? I'll just say that. But I was like, wait a minute. If this was a seasoned nurse, the first thing you think about is repositioning a patient. I don't care what floor you're on. I don't care what you're doing. You don't just say, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I got her a pillow. I talked to the actual registered nurse after some conversations with the care coordinator. I talked to the registered nurse. I sat in the clinic about maybe 2 days, 2 of her sessions, and they were able to cannulate her. And so now it's not a problem, But just to think, like, really, what if I didn't say anything? What if I didn't know any better? What if I didn't know about all of the channels? And a lot of that, I think that comes from seasoned nursing, a time when things weren't trendy. You were held to a higher standard. I hate to sound like the old nurses that trained me. And just, like certain things you just could not do or say, not only because it wasn't professional or acceptable, but your skill set literally was held to such a value, to such a standard. You knew you had to do certain things. You know what I mean? So for myself, I'm like, wow, well, what if I wasn't a seasoned nurse? What if I didn't really have enough to speak up, or just the knowledge to speak up? Things were cool. Nothing was ugly. You know what I mean? Everything was professional, but just to think how many other people are affected by this.
Right.
How many people are affected in this way? And not just in dialysis, med surge, in clinics. What's really going on here? Who's really the mediator? Who's translating for these folks? Who's advocating for these folks? Because I remember a time when it was the nurse. I have seen nurses go back and forth with docs. Like, you know what? This is what's right. This is what we're going to do. You should look at this again, as if it were their family member.
True.
And that's not happening now. At least not as often, not as much.
So, I also had a similar story with my dad, and it wasn't.
Oh, that's right.
I wasn't at the time a nurse. I was just a advocating caregiver, but it was about the stick, the 3-time stick, and a lab tech had stuck him more than once. And he's quiet man, so he didn't say much, but afterwards he kind of shared, what had happened. And he was a cancer patient. So kind of like what you were saying, as far as like having like that level of sensitivity as well as knowledge to, hey, which is typical protocol, after 2 sticks, you need to get someone else to handle it. Because for whatever reason, it could be the patient's veins, it could be your lack of inexperience, but that was the protocol. So I think in that instance, your situation made me think about my dad, because even though I did say something and share it with his care coordinator, as far as just kind of FYI type of situation, it would have been nice if in that scenario, a seasoned nurse or a seasoned tech would have kind of been able to come in and rectify it more immediately, so that in his next experience at that particular clinic, there wouldn't be a level of hesitation or reservation if he had to have an encounter with the same lab tech. So I think also, kind of in healthcare, it would be great to see the same level of succession planning happening that you see on the corporate side. And for me, because I previously worked in corporate settings, there was a lot more grooming and mentoring happening, so that, say, when a head person was transitioning into retirement or transitioning out of their career, that knowledge and information wasn't necessarily lost with the person. So hopefully, as time goes on, more emphasis and more interest comes into play to address kind of how nurses transition out, just because I think there are quite a few nurses, I know some myself, who don't want to leave the floor, but you kind of can't stay in that same space over time, whether it be physically demanding or hourly. But I still feel like those nurses who love the clinical floor or clinical setting still should have a place. So I think it's important for us to, move towards thinking about how to create a space for them.
But and I'm just gonna say this. I mean, I definitely agree about the corporate grooming, but I tell you, and again, maybe I'm just kind of lost and stuck in the dust here. A lot of times, it would have to be an administrative nurse. I'm just gonna say to speak up, because the physician's not. And I'm saying that because we all know, or maybe some people don't know, mostly in administration in the hospital, you have physicians sitting there. So what are the odds that a physician is going to say, oh, what are we going to do with Nurse Sarah, who's been here for, 15 years? What are we going to do with her? That's not what they're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see if nurses would speak up for nurses too. But then I guess kind of the proverbial cycle, it's a thing. If the seasoned nurse isn't there, how can she speak up for another seasoned nurse? Or, a younger nurse isn't going to say that because she just doesn't know enough, even if she means well.
Sure.
And so there are like a lot of battles, I think, that happen between the whole patriarchal, matriarchal thing with physicians and nurses, even if it's not talked about.